This week on the Old School RuneScape Update, Leagues 5 is on the way, and we have our first look at some relics, mechanics, and of course the echoes. Guardians of the Rift receives updates, and we get introduced to the Royal Titans. Are they too difficult, and do the rewards make sense? This is the Old School RuneScape Update, episode 54, recorded Saturday, November 16th, 2024. Out of my league. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Old School RuneScape Update. Sirion and myself are in this week to discuss a myriad of things, but I don't think we're gonna go in the same direction we did with PvP last week, because boy, that was an interesting basket on last week's show, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you all had plenty of things to say about it as well.
Yeah, we read that. We read your comments. We appreciate it, both on the YouTube and the Discord. It's much appreciated, letting us know either way what you think, and of course, in relation to even what Jagex says, one way or another, whether or not you agree with that. It's always fun to hear, and that's what we try and do with these shows, is we try and create avenues for discussion back and forth. But in the meantime, if you want to follow the show notes or subscribe, update.show/OS. Just tap on your favorite podcast listening service. We're on all the big ones: Apple, Spotify, Pocket Casts, and more. And of course, we're also on YouTube at youtube.com/@OSRS update. And I'll mention the Discord too, update.show/Discord, because I know we had a few folks join us in there this past week to discuss the PvP stuff. But you know what's just around the corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's Leagues 5. Leagues 5. The thing that started the show last year for us, Leagues 4. They're doing another one exactly almost to the year. And we've been getting a few teasers since over the past week and a bit. So where are you at with this? How do you feel about these top level teasers we've seen so far?
So when they announced that for all of the future leagues, they were basically going to copy over the format, I was really quite afraid it would get still really quickly. But looking at these relics, I was expecting them to basically just copy over the relics, maybe make some small changes. And we're seeing some relics return, like Fairy's Flight, for example. But most of them are completely new and very, very fresh, which, I did not expect, and I kind of love it, actually.
Yeah. And we're not even getting the full picture of all the relics. Like we got the tier 1 ones, and we saw the teleport relics today, and we saw a snapshot of the goldenrod relic, but we're not seeing exactly all of them as we progress through this up to where we are right now, and I think that's good. We'll get a little bit more as we get closer to the event. And I what would you say in your view is the biggest thing that's changed between this and Trailblazer 4?
I mean, I don't know yet. Right, I think there's going to be a lot of overlap still. I think the fact that they split out the combat masteries into a separate thing from the relics is probably going to have the biggest impact on the game mode. Just looking at the tier 1 relics, for example, they break it up. It's basically the 3 different gathering skills, ish. Rather than breaking it up in support, gathering, and production, because by taking all of the combat stuff out of the relics can be a little bit more focused on the skilling side of things, which I really like, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're going to put the combat masteries together. To me, it would be great if that also gains a little bit of depth, so it's not just I'm going to for melee, ranged, or mage, right?
Right.
You had to pick. Like, it would be great if there's a little bit more depth and subtlety in there, and maybe, going for some kind of hybrid or even tribrid approach becomes very viable,
That's
which actually
exactly what I was going to say, based on that. And, you see the choice of, the Echo pickaxe, the Echo axe, or the Echo harpoon for tier 1. But what we also saw this week was a preview of the Echo bosses, in the sense that we get from even, just the first thing that comes from Cerberus on the Asgardian side is the dog sword. Yes, the dog sword. Obviously play on God sword and whatnot, but I feel like everything that we've seen on these on the Echo front is kind of leaning us into that idea that, well, maybe we might be able to take, one or two combat styles. Maybe we might be able to hybrid this thing.
Yeah, and speaking of the Echo bosses, and the reward drops, I really love that, some of the regions that were perceived as the weaker ones, like the Feminic province and definitely the wilderness, they probably gain sort of the biggest rewards from the Echo bosses, which I think is great. Like, if it weren't for the fact that it is the wilderness, and I will likely never set a foot in it anyway, see largely last week's discussion, those rewards are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I know you and I were discussing the wilderness and the whole idea behind that after last week's show, and what that meant, and we were saying, how great would it be if we could actually, go into the wilderness and utilize some of these things that we have for this. And, do you think you wouldn't choose wilderness for one of your regions this time, would you?
No, I don't see that happening. There's a lot of good things that you can find in the wilderness, but I feel it's just a little bit, it misses the basics.
Yeah.
Right? It has no farming patches. It has it has banks, I guess, but like not a lot. It doesn't have any shops. It just, the only thing you really get out of it is the PVM and like the resource area. And
I remember it was really good for GP
level.
last time.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, why exactly do you need that if you last time just took fire sale, right? So,
yeah.
Overall, I think what we have here is providing a bit of an interesting offering compared to what we had last time, in terms of changing things up, even in terms of how the combo drop items are not necessarily going to be tied, require you to have multiple regions like last time.
That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like there were always a few things I'm like, it's just like, there's going to be content that in like any sort of region locked game mode is going to be useless, because it takes like 2 or 3 regions.
Yeah.
The number of people that have exactly that set of regions and also then go for that particular content is going to be so low. So yeah, like it definitely feels like we see the game mode evolve, right? It's going to get better and better. I'm pretty sure that we'll have fewer clue scrolls, for example, that can't be completed because they sorted all of that out last time. And that's the advantage of doing it yearly. They'll sort of be able to keep up with making sure that region lock content, they tie it to the right leagues regions. It just becomes a checklist item on release, right? Like whenever you do a new clue score step, you just
make sure it works in leagues.
You work in, yeah, exactly. But yeah, we'll see. I'm very optimistic. Like I said, I was a little bit scared it would just be a repeat, and I could probably still have had fun because I only have done one league so far, but that would become stale very quickly. If this is the level of revision they're going to do every year and change things up, and maybe they come up with some kind of theme around it. So this time we have the Echo bosses, and maybe next time they come up with something else completely. I then don't think that reusing the same formula is a big problem. As long as it messes with the meta sufficiently for people to actually want to do different things.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, for me, the Echo bosses are, pardon the pun, out of my league. Um, like I struggle with killing some of the base versions of these bosses, let alone doing the Echo versions. And I know that everybody's overpowered in leagues, but
Hey, it's a good time to learn.
it's a good time to learn. But I'm not gonna keep my hopes up on the Echo bosses. So for me, it doesn't really lead into the equation. But um, it is enough, I think, to upset the meta and give something else for people to try. Like I think there will be a bunch of people who will be trying out the new Colosseum, for example, and that's going to be
Yeah, that's one of the things I think that's most interesting about Varlamore as a region pick is that outside of the Colosseum, Varlamore's combat is relatively mid level at the point we'll be getting it in this league. So it really makes Varlamore kind of a skilling hub for things like hunter and thieving
Mhm.
and whatnot, and now herblore. But on the combat side, when you look at that, you see, well, we have the Colosseum in main game, but everything else combat wise that's come out with Varlamore has been, decidedly mid range. I think that's definitely gonna weigh on people's minds, and we're not gonna get too far into the theory crafting on this episode.
Look,
We do plan to do a segment or show for that.
I think every single review, or not every single one, but like almost every other day, I feel that any planning I've done so far goes out of the window because whatever Jagex reveals just messes with that, which I think is great. It keeps people on their toes. And honestly, I like to do some planning, but I also like thinking on my feet and doing what I feel like in the moment for leagues. I know you are very different in that, but
Yeah, yeah.
hopefully next week, we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive in what we're thinking, and hopefully at that point we know enough for that to be sensible. But I wouldn't put it past Jagex to
Have an October surprise.
throw throw a massive curveball at us when leagues actually releases on
Yeah,
the 27th of
my
November.
biggest thing that will govern me is the task set. The task
Yeah,
sets.
I honestly think that's going to change very little from last time, especially because that's just the volume of it, largely, right? Like there's just so much of it.
And
I
so many
think
of them are dependent on the game content.
exactly. It's just played at game content and reach certain milestones in the game. So I think there might be some changes. I don't think there will be a lot.
Yeah.
So
And when I say task sets, I mean, wait, like what content, do I want to play? I can fairly obviously tell people at this point in time I probably will not be taking Tyrannin again, but there is a very high likelihood I will be taking Asgarnia again.
oh,
That's
interesting.
that's the
Well,
extent of my planning and how I feel right now. Is that I won't be taking Tyrannin, but I will most likely be taking Asgarnia.
well, that sounds like people should tune in next week to find out why that is the case, because I'm not gonna ask right
Or if
now.
I'm completely wrong on that,
Yep.
or if I'm completely wrong on that,
Mm.
as it be. But also this week, Guardians of the Rift, everybody's favorite rune crafting training method, because let's be honest, who wants to run runes and who wants to run at the ZMI, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's of course blood rune crafting in Corinth, Great
Yeah.
Corinth,
Yeah,
but
but not quite there yet level wise for me. Level 60
level
rune
wise
crafting.
no.
So
Yeah.
Guardians of the Rift, these are the changes we previewed on the beta, and overall at the end of the day, I feel like what we have here it just, kind of cleans things up around the edges. And I was that you that said that you sometimes did your Guardians of the Rift on the non-mass worlds?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. Okay. I seem to remember some kind of discussion about that, but that's definitely the biggest thing here in terms of Guardians of the Rift is changing it so that for people who are not playing on the mass worlds, you have an easier shot at being able to be successful, let's just say. I also very much like the pouch changes for the Colossal Pouch. in terms of how it just scales with the levels, completely based on this, rather than just unlocking entirely level 85 rune crafting.
Yeah.
What's your favorite out of the Guardians of the Rift changes here?
Being able to join a round mid, or join a game mid round.
Yeah, because they go for, sometimes, north of 15 minutes, don't they? It feels
Yes,
like.
and then when you're there and you don't get in, and you have to wait like another round or change to a different world where a round has just started. And like, to me, this was always the biggest thing holding me back from just quickly doing a little bit of Guardians of the Rift. I always felt I had to just commit to an afternoon of it, and this makes it a little bit, yeah.
A little bit better. And,
Yes, it makes it a little bit more viable, I think, to just jump in and out. So
yeah, which I think makes sense. I feel like Guardians of the Rift is something you could play on mobile. And that's what you really want for mobiles. You want to be able to really capture that, 10 to 20 minute gameplay window if you just wanted to do like a singular game or something. And I think this enables that.
yeah, no,
So,
exactly. No, and that's awesome. So, and from what I could see, this update also came out with largely with no hot fixes, no major major things being broken. So, kudos to that. I think any kind of rebalance and like bigger quality of life update like this one has the risk of,
going
breaking
off the
things,
rails.
breaking people's workflow in a sense, right? Like there will be something that's just, you know, but no, I think they did a good job
Yeah,
overall.
and to a larger extent, I feel like when it comes to, encounter based skilling training methods, specifically this and Winter Tote, and you can throw Temperos in there too. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like if you were to in effect disrupt people's workflows, like you said, you would really, hear the wrath of the community on this, just because of how important these are for these two respective skills here for this in the case of Winter Tote. So um I'm still on the fence if having Guardians of the Rift as the, lean back rune crafting trading method is the best way to go. But I understand that, rune crafting is a balanced entity, I will say, in old school. And what I mean by that is in terms of it gives a consistent spectrum of XP, whether you look at the nature running, the ZMI stuff, Guardians of the Rift, and then later on, the Bloods and Souls. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right. But also Royal Titans.
Yeah, these are the giant bosses that were announced as part of the Summer Summit.
Yeah, I find the post here very interesting, and I had the weirdest experience this week in relation to these bosses being announced. And Um, I maintain a Twitter account for just, following newsy related things. I don't follow too much RuneScape or old school on it. But interestingly enough, news of these Royal Titans managed to creep into that feed, and in particular, the angle behind it is that, why is Jagex consistently putting out mid level PVM content like this? And I think upon looking at the uh, at the blog post and what these Titans aim to do, it's all part of that. It's all part of that introductory PVM strategy, which is me, somebody who has complained about old school PVM numerous times on this show, really appreciates here. So that's my initial take on this. We'll go into some of the finer details of the rewards and whatnot in a little bit. But what's your first quick take on these?
Um, I am particularly interested. Like the thing that stood out to me was the rewards more than the bosses themselves.
Okay, that's fair.
Um, that being said, I'm very surprised that they're going with untradeable rewards.
It's almost as though you go there and you spend your time, you learn something, and hopefully by the end of it you get the staff and you call it a day and then you move on.
Well, the staff is tradable. It's the prayer scrolls that I find interesting. Especially because the prayer scrolls, they give you basically. I don't know if they give you chivalry, but they're like the equivalent of chivalry for for vigor and augury. They're called Deadeye and Mystic Vigor. Which I don't know. I find it interesting. Are these bosses something people are willing to take on? I mean, okay. I have to admit, I bought my augury and I bought my vigor, right? Because I can, I'm a main.
Yeah.
I still haven't done a single Chambers run on my main account. I probably could with my stats, I just don't have the ability to. So in that respect, if you look at this from an Iron Man perspective, because a main perspective, by the time they get access to these bosses comfortably, they might also have other sources to earn enough money to actually buy augury and vigor, but because they're not the most expensive prayer scrolls, let's be honest.
Yeah, no.
So in that respect, I don't know how much use case this has. And I don't know if I want to really go back and grind these out as untradeable rewards.
So,
but
and see, that's the thing. Aside from the mid-level stuff on this that I saw on the table, that was the other thing. That exact same discussion is that, you know, should these prayer scrolls be here and should they be untradeable?
Yeah, like. So I'm going back to Scurious, right? And,
that's a good.
And maybe this is a skill issue, but I still don't find that like a boss. Like I just breeze through.
It's not fun. It's not fun.
I mean, it's not. I don't find it fun either. So that's definitely hampering my ability to go in and just grind it out and learn it, because I'm pretty sure I could learn it, and even back when it was released, I did have the gear and the stats to kill it, just not very efficiently. My worry is that this is the same, right? It's targeted at mid-level players, but one, to be efficient at it, you need better gear, and two, you need to, you know, spend quite a lot of resources in learning it.
Well, that's exactly what we heard with Scurious, is that, you know, at the time when it came out, I think it was in the level 60s, which is what they said it was targeted for, and I could do one kill per run. And, you know, other folks that I talked to who were, you know, 95 to in the 105 combat band, they said, yeah, we can basically just sit here.
Exactly. And that's the problem you're getting here, right? Like, all of the people, like, who you need to make sure you don't balance this in a way that people with max combat are just going to come in and boop it twice and it dies. So, yeah, like, and this worries me a little bit that you know, the people that are going to come in here, they don't have all of the mechanics, and now we're throwing like a third or fourth boss at that level band, and they have to learn all of the bosses at the same time, right? Like I'm all in favor of like learning new mechanics and targeting bosses at mid game players, but you know, at this point we've gotten so much within a single year. You know, let's back it off maybe a little bit. So we'll see. I mean, honestly, it's going to be interesting to see where this sits compared to, you know, the other giant bosses we have right now, which are Obor and Bryophyta. It will be interesting, right? Like, if these are of similar difficulty level as those two, or maybe probably slightly more difficult, great, love it. But the mechanics are already so much more complex than the other two.
Yeah.
And the rewards are so much better.
They say that this is designed to specifically teach gear swapping, and that it's aimed to be a step above Scurious and Perilous Moons. Which is interesting because Scurious, in my view, is definitely above the Moons. So, and then
No, it's not.
saying that this is above
No.
moons is kind of that doesn't really make sense because I Scurious is definitely, I'd say, 1 or 2 steps below the moons, maybe 3.
Yeah, Scurious I think is easier than the moons. Because the moons are just more mechanics and more complex mechanics. But they use different things, right? Like the Scurious is all about prayer switching, which is my weakness basically. Whereas the moons are a little bit more movement based. Because you just turtle the same prayer, right?
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
but like I find it really weird, right? I feel that for me to be effective at all at the moons, I needed piety.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, without piety, you drag out the fights significantly,
Yeah.
and like the fights are balanced in a way where the longer they drag out, the worse it gets for you, typically.
Yeah, and that's the same thing that happened at Curse of Rav, is that I tried it first without piety, and then I threw piety on, and that made a marked difference.
Yeah,
There.
so to me, balancing these bosses to be beyond that, like more difficult than that, but then giving them rewards that is like, oh yeah, but you kind of needed these already before this point, feels a little bit. Again, for Iron Man, it makes sense because this is definitely more accessible than. I mean, this is not more accessible than the Knight's Training Grounds, let's be honest, but this is definitely more accessible than the Chambers of Xeric. But at the same time, like, I don't know. It feels like if this is beyond the moons, then people typically start getting access to Vigor and Augury.
Yeah, and see, here's the thing. We've been talking about the prayers, but I also want to talk about the Twin Flame staff on this, and that same general idea of, where does this sit and who's it's going to be for. They say, generally speaking, the Twin Flame staff should outcompete the Trident of the Swamp until you're 81 magic, assuming the target does not have an elemental weakness, and should always be worse than the Harmonized Nightmare staff if a target does have an elemental weakness. Obviously, because of the elemental nature of this staff. And based on where the difficulty is landing here, it feels like they're marketing the mechanics of this to be something that is that step above Scurious and maybe on par with the moons. But I feel like the rewards, specifically in the staff, are just a little bit higher.
So I just did the math quickly.
They also have DPS graphs on their website.
Based on the current cost of the prayer scrolls, from the Chambers of Xeric, and the money making you can make at the Moons of Peril, it would take you 6.5 hours of doing the moons to just be able to buy the better scrolls. So,
and you're gonna get other stuff along the way there.
Well, that's if you sell all the stuff, right?
Oh, okay.
If you sell all of the loot from the moons because you're using it for money making, right? You can earn about 2.3 mil per hour. You need about 14 to 15 mil to buy the 2 prayer scrolls. Arcane prayer scroll you can earn back in less than an hour of Moons of Peril because it's only 1.9 mil. And the Dexterous one is 18 or something like that. No, 13 mil. So like it's just a few hours of doing the moon and you can buy it. So why would you go to a boss that is harder and learn it and then grind that out until you get the drops? Unless you're an Iron Man.
And you know what's just so interesting about this? You, in the last 30 seconds, have illustrated what my Twitter timeline was saying this week in a much more constructive way. Without even knowing what they were talking about, mind you, on that.
Yeah. So I feel that the best way to solve this boss is to take their difficulty level and put it lower.
That might be controversial, but I agree. Because that's precisely where the prayer scrolls are targeted. So that makes sense.
Exactly. Like this, and maybe there's a argument to be made that the prayer scrolls are too accessible. I disagree. Let's be honest, piety is not actually that hard to get. If you put your goals to it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to
No, it's fine.
because
It's fine.
because I do think that the concept of like the opposed elementals and
It's
the gear
neat.
switching, like the thematic idea of this boss, I actually really like, and I think it's really interesting. And I'm kind of hoping that they tone down the difficulty a little bit, maybe more comparable to Scarius, because then I would definitely be interested in checking this out.
They're also
Because like gear switches, for example, I haven't gone back there in a while, but like I'm trying to teach myself Zora, and one of the things I'm trying to do there right now is I'm doing magic only to take gear switching out of the equation.
yeah.
Now imagine I get those kills, right? They will not be very efficient. But imagine I can get those kills,
Do
then I
gear
can go
switching.
here and learn
Yeah.
myself gear
Yeah.
switching,
Yeah.
combining those two, right? So, except for
I
the
get it.
rewards just not feeling appropriate, the rest of this seems fine. Like even the twin flame staff, great, love it, awesome.
I wonder how this is going to feel when it arrives. And it's interesting that they're just pulling the rewards on this. Because I feel like if they pulled the bosses itself, I don't know that they would pass. And I'm even questionable at this point about these prayer changes.
I mean,
they're taking another stab at removing defense from chivalry. The defense requirement, rather.
Well, that I'm okay with.
Yeah.
I was okay with that when they tried doing that as part of the zombie pirates update in the wilderness.
Yeah.
So no, that's completely fine with me, and I think the underlying concept of introducing these prayers is very important to the game. Actually, it's just and people did approve the giant encounter as part of the Summit Mega Pool, right?
But we didn't know what the mechanics and the idea behind it were going to be. We didn't know that this was, something that was marketed at this tier level. I don't think at that point.
I'd have to double check, but I don't remember knowing it, so you might be very right. Yeah.
So I just have to say, I hope it works well. I hope it works well. I have questions and I have concerns, and I hope that we're not heading into another, hornet's nest of nonsense with this, and that's what I'll say here. I think we vote yes across the polls. I think that's my vote here. I'm a little bit lukewarm on number 2, but definitely 1 and 3, I think.
Yeah, 1 and 3 definitely. 4 as well. I like the idea about the pages. No idea why they. Well, okay. No idea why they didn't include the soiled pages, but of course those are already obtained through PVM, so that makes sense. Yeah, no idea. I'm gonna have to think about poll question 2, whether I'm actually going to vote yes for that or not, because I want those prayers to come into the game.
Could you imagine how that would have helped us in some of our quests?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And the question is, would we have the PVM combat level to go get them at that point?
See, and that's the thing that just makes this whole thing more complicated for me.
Because if they're going to be above the moons, I had difficulty with the moons at level 90-ish combat using the appropriate dragon type styles. Or the whip, rather, for the slash one.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Oi, listeners, let us know what you think. Thank you very much.
Yeah, look, we are not the best at PVM, and I think if someone is a little bit more better at PVM, maybe, but then even then, I don't know. Like, the problem with these drops, right, is for to be able to grind drops, you not only have to be able to kill the boss, you have to be able to grind the boss.
Yeah,
And that I feel in many discussions that difference doesn't get highlighted.
correct.
And I think it's actually a really important difference. For example, again, I'm right now trying to kill Zora, right? I have no intention of grinding it. I just want that single kill so I can get the achievement diary unlock.
Yeah,
That's like, I'm willing to throw a lot of resources at that single kill, right? My inventory will be, it will cost me 100k per attempt, basically. I'm fine with that. I'm willing to throw money at it, but that's not sustainable in the long term, which is a very different way of doing bosses.
right. And see, that's the entire PVM discussion that you have in any version of RuneScape, is that if you're going to be doing PVM, you're not going to sit down and have fun with it until you're not struggling with it through and through.
And this, for example, is why I think it is completely fine to have a difficult boss as a quest boss, right? Because you're not intended to kill it repeatedly and efficiently, like making money overall. For that, you just need, better gear, better levels, better skill, all of that is completely fine. But and that's the thing. Everybody was like, oh, but the Moons of Peril are like a pushover, and Scurrius is a pushover. Yeah, if you have max gear, it is. And I could get a kill in with my scuffed level 60, level 70 gear. But if I can do one kill per trip, I'm not gonna really get the drops anytime soon.
Yeah, and that's just a general PVM issue across the board. And then you get to the whole question of, should PVM, be made easier? Should PVM be made more accessible? And with that, then you start questioning, well, if it is, then what happens to the prices of key drops from various things, that are Bill Plus, so on and so forth down the line, right? So it's a problem, and I think this boss is attempting to solve it at the bottom end by making it so that it's easier for people to learn. And there we have it. But speaking of discussions and trips down memory lane, we do have a bit of a questing update for you guys in terms of the Slug Menace, one of RuneScape's finest quests.
I mean, it's a little bit.
It wasn't bad.
Oh, yeah. I think the mechanics are a little bit outdated, but not the worst. But I kind of,
I always enjoyed the Temple Knight stuff.
Yes, and I do think that the overplot of the quest, and especially, you're gathering the different pages at some point to find out about this door.
Yeah.
And all of them are suddenly very conveniently available, which, when you're doing the quest as a player, you're like, that's unique, and then you find out that people wanted you to find it because they're fake. And actually you're sort of doing the wrong thing, which I think is hilarious. Like, it's a cliche, right? Oh, the player gets thrown for a loop. That
is the entire arc of your character in this game.
But this time it felt believable. It felt,
It felt like something that could happen in one of those, spy movies, right?
Yes.
So
it felt all a little bit more believable. So overall, I liked it.
And the question I think people are probably asking is, why did we wait so long for this? Because this is the quest that unlocks Proselyte. We just never had a use for it. And when Well Gothic Sleeps came out, we got Elite Black, which had a similar prayer bonus. I mean, Proselyte still has a better, I think it has a bit of a melee defensive bonus to it, more than Elite Black does. But, I mean, I guess it's good to have Proselyte now.
I mean, I had wanted it for a while, but I never felt... It wasn't an unmissable item for me. So.
Yeah. You were mentioning it for your Iron Man.
Oh yes, I need it for my Iron Man because it's similar to adamant, and try getting a full set of
Oh
adamant.
yeah, level 88 smithing to smith the adamant plate body. Wonderful.
Exactly. Like there's just no good way of getting that. Uh, it's gonna cost me a bunch of money, but the proselyte set all around is just, it's probably gonna be my go-to melee armor for a good time.
Yeah, and then you can lean into the prayer bonus with that um, as well. And I think the thing that I take away from this at the end of the day is that, maybe we needed more Temple Knights quests, but I feel like that arc probably worked its way to its natural conclusion, probably with Slug Menace. So
No, no, we still have Mother Malum, Mother Malus.
well, I'm just looking at the wiki right now, and under series, it says that Slug Menace is the last one in the Temple Knight.
Yeah, because we never got a sequel. It's not done yet. We still have to deal with Mother Malum.
Oh, okay. You think they'll do that one day?
I hope so.
Yeah. Did RS3 do that?
I know they did the Void Knight series, which felt similar, but I think it's different.
The RS3 had Salt in the Wound. Where Mother Malum appeared.
Okay, there's Kenneth's Concerns, which is the sequel.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Same area.
And then that gets turned into Salt in the Wound.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, fair enough. No, but overall, I mean, just a good little quest that we decided to knock off the list here. In Witch Haven, I don't know who needs to hear about Slug Menace at this point in time, but after that, we headed off to Mauritania and did Haunted Mine and the mini quest, The Lair of Tarn Razalor. Another quest that people are wondering, gee, why haven't these guys done that yet?
Yeah, that one also, like the Self Amulet. I mean, come on, we should have had that ages ago. But there's still quite a few quests coming up where it's going to help us with, Pirate
Dragon
stuff,
Slayer 2.
a lot of Undead, Dragon Slayer 2. So that's going to be all good stuff. Yeah, no, I thought it was a fun little quest. It felt like a fun little puzzle box, the Haunted Mine.
Yeah, it was. And I had no memory of doing that quest, just like I had no memory last week of doing Curse of Arav, and that's just so interesting because I more shocked at Curse of Arav, but maybe less so at Haunted Mine. And I'm fairly certain when Haunted Mine came out, I would have done that on launch week. And the thing that I was wondering about with that is that the little ghost fight at the end of that, I'm wondering how I did that back in December 2004. Because I had just started playing in June of that year, and I know for a fact that every quest that came out after Priest in Peril I did pretty much on launch week.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit difficult in terms of being cumbersome in terms of the clicking. For us, I used some food here, so I definitely would wonder how a younger me and a less experienced me would do that. But you got run over by a train.
I got run over by a train, yes.
But
that was almost the end of that fight for me.
Oh, really? Is that how bad it got?
Yeah.
See, I had no idea. I was just minding my own, and I got through it with 4 or 5 monkfish left in the inventory, and I brought some prayer potions along, but I didn't know what kind of situation you were in that it was getting like that. So. Anything else this week of note that you want to share?
I did a little bit more work. I did some more bird genocide. And,
oh God!
Got myself the medium Western diaries done.
And how many kills, dare I ask, is that?
Less than 25.
Okay. Okay, that's
Hard
not too bad.
hard will be 300, and elite will be 1,000. So yeah,
And that's
that's
the fun that awaits Kandarin, or anybody who chooses Kandarin
no,
in
no,
leagues.
no, 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 no,
No.
no, no. Little. This is a little. I don't know if they will fix it this time, but so the first time they did Trailblazer, there was some kind of bug that allowed people to rack up kills really quickly. I don't remember what it was, but that was the case. They patched it out, that bug, but because a few people had basically been able to get rack of all the kills, what they decided to do to keep it fair is that everybody in that takes the Kandarin province basically starts with 1,000 chompy kills. That change was not deleted as part of Trailblazer Reloaded. So I was there, just happily going away at killing my chompies until somebody said, like, hey, you should check your bow, because you probably already have all of the chompy kills, and lo and behold, there it is. So maybe they will fix it, but presumably, if you take Kandarin, you will just get all of the chompy kills from the get-go. So
Can they do that with Barbarian Assault and make that all maxed out too?
Well, wouldn't that be something?
That would make me consider Kandarin.
I still don't think Barbarian Assault is bad if you do it with some friends.
Yeah, well, I'm not. I just don't have the desire to organize that, and I don't want to spend time in that content, and that's honestly what it comes down to, for me on that. But nothing really to report from me this week. Just a few herb runs here, there, and whatnot. But I think that pretty much brings us to the end of our prepared remarks for this week. Unless there's anything else you want to ask the listeners about, bring forward. No. Okie dokie then. Well, we will be back next week to talk more about leagues. It's that time of year, of course, heading into December. We've been plotting things out. We only have a few real content updates left. We look forward to talking about the old school game jam at some point, amongst other things. But lots of goodness coming to OSRS Update as we round out the year. So if you want those episodes delivered automatically to you, do subscribe. Best way to do that is by heading over to update.show/OS and just clicking on your favorite podcast listening service. And of course, we're also on YouTube at youtube.com/OSRS Update. But with that being said, we'll see you guys next week for another episode of the Old School RuneScape Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Bye.